In the new millennium, film and video is having a great impact on the way we read and write fiction. So applying film theory to writing fiction makes sense. It improves our fiction, and especially it improves our fiction geared towards the audience today who are ready to receive forms of fiction writing that resemble film and video. Let's look at scene contrast. Now this comes out of the film theory studies, but we can apply it to fiction. So what you can do is you can take one of the stories that you're writing and you can divide it into scenes. And so basically, if you have a story that starts out in a building and then it involves traveling from point A to point B and it ends near a lake, you can divide that into 3 scenes. And what you can do is you can use scene contrast to enhance each one of those scenes. So let's say that for scene 2, you want the trip from the building to the lake to seem quiet and vacant and empty and abandoned as possible. One thing you can do is you can go to the first and last scenes, and you can, by making them more crowded, more noisy, more full of activity, you can enhance the feeling of quiet and vacantness in the middle scene through scene contrast. So you can make scene 2 feel more quieter only because in the previous scene it was so much noisier. For my example, in scene 1, your protagonist is in a room and there are people coming in and out, travelers, suitcases, luggage, congestion, confusion, luggage searches, sirens going off, a forklift backing up, making the beeping noise, low ceiling, flashing lights. And what we're doing by congesting and noisy and making noisy scene 1 is that as soon as the protagonist runs down the stairs and goes out on the street, there aren't any cars, there's no one around, there aren't any planes in the sky, it's just quiet, you can't hear anything. And when you're writing scene 2, you don't need to describe how quiet it is, you just need to leave out the noise, leave out the congestion. And because of the previous scene, the reader is going to have an experience by contrast of quietness. So this is through scene contrast, you can enhance scene 2. So when you have your protagonist in scene 2 running through the emptied out streets, what does the protagonist hear? The sounds of their own feet hitting the pavement, maybe their heart beating. And these are sounds the protagonist would hear when it's very quiet and there aren't any noises around. So when your reader is reading your story on a conscious level, they don't necessarily think, it sure is quiet on the street, but subconsciously they feel it, subconsciously they experience it, and with great effect. So scene contrast comes right out of film theory, but I'm sure you can see how effective it can be to writing better fiction. Let's go ahead and use it in the final scene. So when your protagonist gets to the lake, their family is there, their friends are there, all standing there, and they talk with each other, and you're writing dialogue about the conversation. And that scene is in great contrast to the previous scenes because the protagonist was alone, not necessarily by themselves. In the first scene they were in a crowd, but they were in a crowd of strangers. And in the second scene they were totally alone, running down the street. And then when they're encircled by everyone they know well. And so being aware of how scene contrast can enhance a scene, not by actually working on that scene, but by working on the scenes before and after it. So think about any story you're writing on, and think about the last time you were working on writing a particular scene and you wanted to make it more fill in the blank. You wanted it to have more of a sense of action, or more of a sense of suspense, or more, you wanted to make it funny, or you name it. Ask yourself, what were the following scenes like? A lot of the time, if you go back to those previous scenes and make them less whatever you want to make the following scene, then that's a great way of bringing a sense of action. You could have the scene before just be where the characters are bored, sitting around, waiting, and then all of a sudden when they're thrown into a situation of chaos, by contrast it seems that much more like chaos. Whereas if you had several scenes where a lot was going on, your reader's not going to feel that sense of, it's in feeling the change, it's in feeling the contrast that readers feel whatever it is you're trying to include in your scene. As you're writing, as you're working on a particular scene, ask yourself, well, what scene comes after this, and how can I change the one I'm working on now and make it more in contrast to what the next scene will be? Now, this technique of writing is great for all of those seemingly difficult to achieve things in writing. How do you make a romance more romantic? How do you make suspense more suspenseful? As an example, with making a romance more convincing, you can start out with the protagonist being lonely, being isolated, being bored in their life, feeling like something is missing. And then so that when the possibility of romance, it becomes in their environment, then that contrast is that much more felt. Good storytelling is a lot about convincing wins and losses for both the good guys and the bad guys. So when you have a character gain something or win something or achieve something or that sort of thing, you want it to make sure the reader feels it, feels they get a sense of excitement or happiness for that and the same with losses and injuries and failures. So the next time you're working with a character and you want them to find the Holy Grail or discover the treasure or get stabbed by a spear, all the wins and losses, when you're working on wins and losses, ask yourself, where can I go back in previous scenes and add contrast to enhance the feeling of winning or losing? And remember, you're going to have a lot more fun with this if you think of it creatively. You're not trying to come up with the right answer. You're brainstorming. You're thinking of the different possibilities. And so this is not a pass-fail situation. This is one where you're thinking creatively and just you're keeping your eyes open for the different possibilities and the different things you might not have thought of before that you can work with to enhance your story. Okay, as an example, let's say that your protagonist gets a bicycle. Okay, that's a win. How can that feel like a bigger win? Okay, and this is totally off the cuff brainstorming. Put your character in a desert where they're walking along for days and they don't see anything and they're afraid they might not be able to make it out of the desert. And you can understand, now you can see how I'm going back to the scenes before to add the contrast of deficit. if your character is going to gain something, they'll feel more of a gain if it's answering a deficit, if there's something they didn't have before, and by gaining, and through contrast, now that they have it, it creates a real change for them. It changes their situation. So I'm curious, are there other writers out there who study film theory and realize that they can apply it to creative fiction? If so, please leave a comment. Also, seeing contrast does not have to, it can be simply that the scenes, that there are changes, that the scenes are different from each other. So it doesn't have to be so much hunger goes to fed or sleepy goes to sleeping. It can be just a change in scene, and distinct scenes will contrast and add to the feeling of each scene that the character goes to. If your entire story is all action, it works against itself. But if you change it, if it goes through distinct scenes, then each scene is enhancing the feeling of the scene that follows it. Thank you so much for watching. If one of you write that next great bestseller, I will feel like my life has been a success. So I for the comments I receive, thank you so much. It really just fuels me making more of these. Please remember to hit the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment. And also, please visit my fiction illustrated storytelling at solomation.com. You can watch the episodes for free. If you want to be one of my super viewers, please write down the website, solomation.com, where people can see it. Use a Sharpie, write it on your notebook. Remember, you're living in a world where people are not, where the content people get is not so greatly limited to what a small few decide to put on your TV set. So by hitting the like button and telling others about informative videos you find, you're helping to create an amazing new paradigm in content, in learning, in entertainment. I hope your writing goes good, and have a good day.